and the quadruple is on.
It's funny because I heard somebody talk about the quadruple at half-time when a presenter, and I said, why are you even... Man City are not thinking about no quadruple. This is a massive game for them. They've probably done the league, you have to say. But they just need to get through that game, not thinking about, like, the quadruple. It's just like...
Well, can we think about it?
No,
because otherwise you've really put me in the box there.
It's too much pressure, and it's taken away from the fact that Man City need to focus on this, because I think this is a magnificent opportunity for them to actually win the Champions League. I thought the way they played yesterday against the Dortmund side that started brilliantly was just brilliant, the way Man City were. It's the best I've seen them in this competition, by far.
But look, we are going to talk about potentially a quadruple, because they are fighting on four fronts, but they have pretty much fully fit squad. They have, you know, two sets of talented 11s in there, and they can draw on that.
Yeah, of course they can. I think, for me, the way Pep has handled the season, especially how condensed it's been, he's done magical things with it, really. Obviously, he's been lucky enough to, like you said, have that sort of depth where he can just rotate. But I think the key thing is that every player that's actually stepped in has performed at a high level, and which is hard to achieve, because I've been there as a player, and sometimes when you don't play for games, to come in and have that match fitness at the same level as everybody else is hard. So for me to keep that up and the morale high and everybody happy and smiling, even when they ain't playing, sometimes is a tough thing, and he's done really well with that.
And Wright was saying that they should they are focused on the Champions League from this point in. You could tell that even with the team selection against Leeds last weekend. OK, they lost the game, but it was 7 changes to their starting lineup for that one.
They have so many options. It was interesting, a couple of weeks ago, Zinchenko did use the Q word. He did mention the quadruple. And then Pep Guardiola very quickly...
Absolutely.
No discussion. But they're so stacked. I know there's a smarter way to say it, but they have strength and depth in every single area. You barely notice the absences throughout the season. So Kevin De Bruyne was out for a little bit, and then Ilkay Gundogan stepped up. Raheem Sterling hasn't had a spectacular season, but the way Riyad Mahrez comes in and reminds you why they spent so much money to acquire Riyad Mahrez. Very often Champions Leagues are about high variance and who's fit. I mean, Bayern Munich have been knocked out in part because Lewandowski got injured in international duty. Manchester City find a way to just keep on ticking.
I think as well, Kels, with the quadruple, they will think of it as they get to... It's like, say, they do the Premier League, yes. If they do the Champions League, then you think of that quadruple. I don't think they're nowhere near thinking of it, because that's why Pep would shut that down, because it can easily distract you. Can easily distract you.
It's just about winning that next game all the time. I mean, you mentioned Ilkay Gundogan there. He said before the game against Dortmund that Manchester City, because they have been on this winning run, because they have been such a strong force, that they need to learn to deal with setbacks. And that was in part recovering from the game against Leeds and the defeat by Leeds, but also going behind to Dortmund in that game. They're the sort of moments he's talking about.
Yeah, and I think that the way they're playing, and you see the way they're selecting their team, the loss against Leeds, I didn't think was a massive thing, because, like I believe that Man City have done the league. I think that they're focusing on this game, and what I saw in this particular game is, especially the way that Dortmund started, it was literally, they flew out the blocks. And I heard somebody say, yeah, Man City, I think Jermaine Jenner, I heard Jermaine Jenner say something like, they won't panic. And it was a very good point he was making, because you cannot panic in that moment, simply because you can't let them score again. Get yourself pushing up to try and get this goal, and then you leave someone like Erling Haaland, you know, one-on-one, and then that could be a problem. So they played so well and eased themselves back in the game, and then just dominated it. Dominated it with excellent football, and the players came up with the goods. But it was, like I say, it was a brilliant, brilliant performance.
Yeah, fantastic performance from them. And like you said, recovering from going a goal down to go on and win that game and then wrap up the tie to progress to the semi-finals. It's been interesting watching the way that they've played this season, Manchester City, in a season where there are no supporters in the ground. And it feels as though their kind of controlled football is... Not that it's particularly suited to this, but that they're not affected in the same way that some teams are by the empty grounds.
I think a lot of that has to do with Pep. I think he's got this winning mentality where when they're playing, he's going through the same emotions. His expectations are so high that it doesn't matter whether there's fans in the stadium or not. He still wants you to deliver what he wants you to deliver as if they were still there. Like, if you miss a chance, he's not happy. He thinks you should do better. If you miss the pass or you try to go through when you should have passed it, he loses it. And I think all those emotions rub off on players. So it's kind of hard for them to drop off if the expectations are so high. Plus, they will lose their position and then it's nearly impossible to get back in the way the players are actually performing.
You can see that they're probably training like that. They're probably at a stage now, even in training, where it is as intense as how they would play in any Premier League game now or the Champions League game now, because you could see that they've got a manager that no one can step off. You can't afford to. Like you mentioned, Raheem Sterling kind of getting aside at the moment, and rightly so, simply because of how well the rest of them are playing when they do step up. So this is where you're judged now with City. This is their best opportunity. They're in the right place to try and capitalise on this.
One of the main reasons that Raheem Sterling can't get in is, of course, the form of Phil Foden, who just is one of those players who, the more responsibility, the bigger the occasion, the better he looks.
He's incredible, isn't he? It's been really interesting watching Phil Foden's nurturing of talent and how he's picked up from all the very, very intelligent Manchester City players around him and then created something entirely of his own. You'd think it was quite obvious that the succession line was meant to be David Silva, then Bernardo Silva, then Phil Foden would come through. And then Phil Foden sort of made the leap ahead of schedule. Not only superseded Bernardo Silva for much of the season, but was also, I did not expect him to be this much of a goal scorer. I did not expect him to be this good attacking. You'd think if you spent most of your teenage years watching David Silva, you'd be playing the pass before the pass. But he's like, no, I want goals instead.
Yes.
And he's brilliant at getting goals. I think now it's this fun thing of not only where is he going to play for Manchester City, but where is he going to feature at the Euros for England? Because at this sort of film, he's a starter for me.
Yeah, because part of it is that he is playing probably in a slightly different position from where he would have imagined that he would play. He's much more of a kind of central midfielder as he was developing. And like you said, somebody who would see the game. Pep Guardiola's already said this season he thinks he's not quite at that level to play there. But the thing is, he's so effective where he does play him that it doesn't really make any difference.
And this is why when you go back to, and I think I was guilty as well to say, we need to see this guy playing. He needs to play more. He needs to get more experience of playing, and that was he going to go out on loan? And then the more you think of it and you see what he's doing now, the more you think, this is why I'm probably sitting here and people like Pep are doing what they're doing, because the way he's got him through and brought him through playing with people like David Silva, Bernardo Silva, all those midfielders that he's learning from, different positions he's probably played in training. You know, the fact that he's had to go down to the 23s to come back up, but he will not let him go on loan anyway. He actually was so adamant that no, he's not going nowhere. And when you look at where he pops up anywhere on the pitch, and the same with England, he's damaging, he's doing damage. And like Carl said, rightly so, he's adding goals to his game. And like, we're talking about literally a phenomenon if he starts scoring as well, because anytime he gets on the ball, he doesn't do much wrong. You know, the passes and everything, the weight of the pass and everything. Then you add goals to that. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, it's one thing Pep Guardiola saying, and look, they're going to listen to Pep, but to saying to a young player, no, stay here. I'm not going to play you. You're not going to get regular first-team football. I'm going to bring you through gradually. And it's another thing for a young player who will be impatient for their chance to think, OK, I'm going to listen and I'm going to wait this one out. So the credit has to go to Phil Foden and the people who are advising him as well.
Yeah, it most definitely does. But at the same time, I think Pep and obviously Foden and his team have weighed up, if he does go somewhere, is it going to be the same quality of players he's playing against and learning from, even if it's in training? Because for me, if Phil Foden goes somewhere and the quality's not like that, then it's doing him more harm than anything else. So I think that had a lot to do with the reason why they kept him. They wanted to mould him into the way they want him to play as a City player, to come through as a complete City product, basically, from the academy.
I think as well, you have to give him credit for his professionalism and the fact that he has shown patience. Talking about somebody who's a captain of the England World Cup side that won the World Cup against Spain, and, you know, Callum Hudson-Odoi is in that team, you know, Jadon Sancho was in that team. You know, the top players were in that team, and he was the captain, and you would have thought that he's going to come and it's going to happen for him. And for him to be patient and say, OK, I'll wait, although he's got everything about him to push that, the conversation that I want to play, I want to be playing now. And now you're looking at him, it just seems perfect. And that has got to go down to the way he has been managed, not only by the football club and his manager, but obviously he's got a management team around him that make the right decisions for him.
It's really interesting that you mentioned those England unders teams, which they had that summer of being just incredibly
Amazing,
successful. But you're right to point out that some of his teammates who will have been maybe less talented and weren't captain the side have gone on to have careers, and they will have been playing first-team football. So that's something that he'll have been looking at them and thinking, but they're getting their opportunity, and I keep being told I'm better than them, and then that he's not playing me.
Yeah, as a player, it's definitely going to happen. And like Dad said, the fact that he's so patient, it's actually, for me, showed in his game, the way he plays with so much maturity. Some of the things he does are kind of things you expect from a player in their prime at like 20, 27, 28, but he seems like he's been doing it from 19 years old, you know what I mean? So he grew up really quickly in the football world. But in respect, I think it was handled perfectly for him. I think the way Jadon Sancho it worked perfectly for him, but that might not have been the case for Phil Foden. So I think both of them picked something that suited them as a person and as a player, and it's worked out and benefited both of them.
Another young player who's been developing extremely well is Haaland, and he's been linked with Manchester City. The way that they've contained him in the two legs against Dortmund, do you think that has any bearing on how Pep Guardiola sees him? And was Jude Bellingham was the player getting all the plaudits in the game last night?
So last night was the second time in Champions League history you had two goal scorers under the age of 21 in Bellingham and Foden. So congratulations, Gareth Southgate. Have fun putting those in the same team. I think one of the really interesting things with the Haaland and whatnot is just how good defensively this Manchester City team is and how they did it really, really quickly. So last season, Vincent Kompany goes, Fernandinho has to spend much of the season at centre-back because Laporte gets injured, and you're thinking this is possibly the end. You get partway, maybe in November of this season, people were saying this is Pep Guardiola's hardest ever challenge, how he's never been at club for this long, how he's never had to reboot a team. And it seemed as simple as just move in Garcia, put Fernandinho back where Fernandinho needs to be. Hooray. And I think this is a really interesting City team where they're it's the most conventional you've seen in City. So it's back four, Fernandinho's a number 6, Gundogan's a number 8. When Kevin De Bruyne is in there, that's a number 10. Whereas there's less of the 3/8s and the fun triangles, and I'm doing this hand movement all the time. So there's less of that going on. But in being more functional in what is a very dysfunctional season with COVID and so many games, City can just repel things that most teams can't anymore. Haaland is a fantastic player, but when Jadon Sancho is not there being the sort of chance creator, whatever, he does look a little bit more human.
Yes.
And I think City just went, OK, we'll just nullify you in these little half spaces and then try and, set our defensive line back a little bit further. So Garcia can't get done, and Diaz and whatnot. And I think that was that.
It was brilliant. Because there was some instances where you saw him come off, lay the ball off and go again, where you can see, wow, it was sharp. It was like electric, the movement. But because they were so compact in what they were doing, City, and they didn't panic, because you cannot panic with that kind of predator around. So the way they played the game and they started like they did, I'm thinking Dortmund probably tried to nick maybe another goal and tried to really put pressure on City. But City, they quelled that and stopped the supply to him. But there was moments in the game where I saw him do some sharp stuff where you're thinking, wow, he would have been, for me, if he's looking at that City side, with the way that they played and how they control the game, he cannot tell me as a striker you're not feeling like, wow, that would be pretty cool to be there. You have to go.
You miss out on Jadon Sancho, then you look at the City team and go, it's going to create chances for me there.
Exactly. It would be, for him to not watch and be impressed by how City dealt with the pressure of a Dortmund side who were, like I say, started brilliantly, and the way they just played themselves in, knowing that someone like De Bruyne has now signed, Foden's there, Sterling's looking to maybe negotiate a new contract, Pep's there for another few years. It seems now that you'd look at all those things, there's not too many negatives about looking at City. And he got to watch them twice about what they do. And you could, as a striker, and if he's like me, selfish and greedy, you probably look at that team and think, I would want to play in that team.
There was that fun moment at full time of both
When they were
legs,
talking.
where Foden's talking with his mouth covered to Haaland.
Tell him I said yes. Tell him I said yes.
Which is that sort of very ominous going, oh no, please not happen, please.
Oh, yeah, how does everyone else get on against them in training? But it is that defensive improvement has been the cornerstone of everything that City have done, really, this season. We always talk about their fantastic attacking talent, but since it was probably about November time and the Manchester derby, when it was a terrible, terrible 0-0, but they kept the clean sheet, and that seemed to kind of spark something for them.
I think, for sure, because me as an attacker, when you go up and attack and you create a chance and maybe the keeper catches it and then he goes down the other end, throws it, they have a break and they score, it's like almost every time you get the ball in that half, you feel like you have to force an issue, like you have to do something. And I felt that's what it was for City last season, because they always knew there was a chance of them scoring a goal. They always felt the need to sometimes force when they didn't have to. Now, when you watch them against Borussia yesterday, because they know we're so sure at the back, at times I thought, go on, it's there to pass. They would come back and they would go out the other side, and they was just patient. They pretty much, in a way, as well as they played, they bored and worked Dortmund to the point where they were exhausted in the latter stages of the game, and Dortmund fall asleep at a quick corner, because Phil Foden scored one of those, I think, once or two times this season already, where he gets the ball and lets fly, and they just sleep in 2-on-1 quick corner, and he gets off a good shot. And with City, that's what you're going to get. But back to the Haaland, I would love to see him at City, to be honest with you.
We'd all like to see him every week playing in the Premier League. They've got the semi-final coming up against Paris Saint-Germain, who, you know, knocked out Bayern Munich, the holders, one of the favourites for the tournament this season. They're now out of it, which feels like it's opened everything up a bit with Munich going out. So when you look at the two PSG performances, maybe the first leg of their tie, it was all about Mbappe. The second leg was all about Neymar. And you look at those threats against that City defence. What are you thinking?
Well, if you're going to look for two players, you know what I mean, if you had one of those players, you're hoping, like, unfortunately, Haaland didn't have Sancho with him, so you've only got one player trying to breach that defence. With PSG, you've got two. You know what I mean? There's no way on this earth you're going to keep them both quiet for 90 minutes. And both of those players are the kind of players that need a moment to turn a game. They could turn a game in a moment. And that is the problem that City will have. We know that City can play their stuff and do, and so, but they've got two players who they're desperate to win this tournament as well, that club, just like how City are. And they'll probably see this as a massive opportunity for them. And you look at those two players, and I'm just saying, it's going to be so tough to keep them quiet. And this will be easily the toughest test that defence ever had this season, the toughest test.
Oh, it's going to be such a good game, though.
Yeah.
I think everyone's forgetting about Angel Di Maria as well. I think
Very much so.
I mean, gosh, I
he's
forgot about
another
Angel Di
one.
Maria.
He was like, to keep, like you said, two, but not only two, three.
Yeah.
Quiet it's going to be tough. But
in a time, Sean, when they're desperate to win this, Neymar has to win this. You know, he has to win this tournament with PSG. You know, just like we know that City have to win it with Pep and what Pep's trying to do. And you know the thing, if it's so stupid to say, but if Haaland was in the City side,
we win.
I'm thinking City beat them.
Right, but he's not. and it just sets it up so nice. It's a really difficult one to predict, I think. Or you're going to say no.
No, it's that. Manchester City are probably the best team on the planet right now. They've got one of the best managers on the planet right now. They've got the fewest injuries. Everything makes me go, that's the favourite. However, most Champions Leagues are not won by the favourite. No. Most Champions Leagues, freak occurrences happen, people get injured, there's offsides, there's handballs. Manchester City against Spurs got knocked out by a sort of handball goal by Llorente. Well, weird things happen to Manchester City. And then we've had this whole Pep overthinks it.
These things happen to PSG as well.
I'm not going to say Pep's going to overthink Neymar and Mbappe, but Pep's probably going to overthink Neymar and Mbappe. And that's the thing. You
can't not.
Yes.
To be honest with Carl.
And it's such a fun matchup because it's not just PSG, it's Mauricio Pochettino's PSG. And Pochettino and Pep have, to use the boxing analogy, styles make fights. There is something very fun about when those two go at each other because both adherents of using possession as a tool, both believe in pressing football, both believe in using the emotional output of their players to do stuff and get buy-in. I think PSG's defence, they're injured a lot. They've got some weaknesses in central midfield. If it's going to be a big thing on Verratti, and then when Verratti gets his customary yellow card, because he always gets a yellow card. So it should be Manchester City. But every time I say that, my brain goes, however. So I'll say PSG are going to do it because...
Why not?
Why not?
Because why not?
I'm going to go with City, though.
Yeah.
Worst come to worst, bet on the team that has Mbappe.